Rather, a welcoming heart embraces all who come in Jesus' name. Do you have a welcoming heart this morning? I think this is a real valid point, and John's going to illustrate this for us. Because I find within Christianity that we sometimes as Christians are the most exclusive and divisive and cliquish groups on the earth. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not just in Christianity, because it's not a Christian problem, it's a human problem. We're all human beings. We're Christians who are human beings. And oftentimes we're just as cliquish as the world, aren't we? Even within the church. And we draw the lines in places where Jesus didn't draw the lines. And we make people do things that Jesus didn't require them to do often, don't we? If we are to accept them as an equal peer. Oh, we might accept them, but they're going to be lesser in our mind, aren't they? And Jesus here takes one who is of minimal status within his society, and he embraces him. And that's what a welcoming heart does. Believe me, you know whether or not you're welcome in the house of a visitor. When you go visit somebody, you know whether or not you're welcome, don't you? You can tell if they're really happy to see you, or if they're just, quite frankly, waiting for you to go. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because I've been in places sometimes where there are people who seem like I can't take a hint. And perhaps you're one of those who have given other people a hint. Hello? Don't you see? I didn't invite you in. You just walked in. I opened my door because you knocked. There are those who can't take a hint. But generally, I hope you are not that kind of person. I hope you're able to read the body language around you and to pick up on that. But you can tell generally if you're welcome or not. And a welcoming heart embraces those all who come in Jesus' name. Now, I'm making an important point here because Jesus is not just talking about embracing all people. Does he say that? No, he says those who come in my name. Very important. Very important. That we are to welcome and embrace all those who come in Jesus' name, even the most pitiful. I had that in there because was that thought about children? I think one of the groups in society that we ought to have the most pity upon would be children. Because they've not matured. I mean, I'll tell you straight up with me, everyone might have their own pet sins that they just hate the most. There are crimes that they just think are wretched, and that can be different from mine, that's fine. But one thing that just really gets under, that just I have a hard time with is the abuse of a child, particularly sexual abuse. And the rape of a woman. That really bugs me. Because, particularly with children, because children are so vulnerable. They can't defend themselves against adults. You know, I don't care what Kevin does in Home Alone. Those guys were just stupid. If you've seen the movie, right? I mean, you know, children cannot defend themselves, and they're at the mercy of adults. And they're at their mercy physically, they're at their mercy intellectually because they don't know the things that adults know. That's why I find it such a crime to harm a child. But Jesus' point is not necessarily children, but his point is those who are in the faith, who are called by his name. Children are pitiful in a lot of senses. You know what I mean? We have to have pity upon them. You see a child who is struggling. I mean, I see a child struggle with his homework, it breaks my heart. My own children. Yes, it does, dear. Don't look at me like that. I help my kids with their homework. No, it does. It breaks my heart. Even if I see another child, you know, my wife works at the school, and I hear stories, quite frankly, about how some of our local kids are dressed coming to school, and about, you know, where some of them sleep at night. Some of them don't even sleep under roofs. And their parents don't take care of them, and their parents are occupied with other things, and it breaks my heart. And I wish there was something I could do about it. I wish there was something that I could do for all those kids, because I have such pity for them and compassion. And Jesus here is saying that whoever welcomes one of these little children, one of these pitiful ones, and now it's not necessarily the little children he's concerned with, it's his disciples. Those who follow him, even the most pitiful bunch of them. And I ask you, do you have pity upon the most pitiful Christian you know? Think about those who are caught up in sin, who are slaves to sin still. Oh, they made a profession at some point in their life to follow Jesus, and they still claim from their lips that they're following Jesus. And when you talk to them, they seem to be guilt-ridden. They know that the life they're living is wrong, and they want to change, but they feel like they cannot. They feel like they are a slave to this. They fell into this temptation, and now it's got a hold of them, and they can't get out of it. Do you sit there and just simply judge them? Or do you have pity upon them? Do you have mercy in your heart upon them and have compassion? Do you welcome them? See, Jesus is not saying that whoever takes up any child, embraces, and takes notice of it as he did, receives him. That's not what Jesus is saying. His point is not about children. And he's not saying that we are to become humble like this little child. He's not telling us to be like children here. He's not saying we're to become humble like this child. Number one, children aren't very humble. Hello? I've thought a lot about kids this week, and honestly, I'm speaking real broadly, but generally, kids are not humble. They demand certain kinds of jeans. They demand certain kinds of toys. They make all kinds of demands, don't they? They demand, they don't serve others first. They generally serve themselves first, don't they? Now apply that to you. Are you a child or have you grown up? Hello? Anyways, that's not Jesus' point. I just threw that in there. Jesus is saying, be like me, who embraces little children, who probably won't thank you in the end for it. I think Jesus is saying, be like me, who embraces little children, who probably in the end won't thank you for it. Because how often, if you have kids, have you done something for one of your children, and they don't thank you? They don't thank you for doing the laundry. They don't thank you for making them dinner unless you teach them to say thank you afterwards. Otherwise, they won't thank you. They expect it and think it's just coming, don't they? That's part of that pitiful state. They're not mature. They don't realize what goes into it. Be willing to show respect. Jesus is saying, be willing to show respect and perform the least office of love and kindness to the most pitiful believer. You see, he who belongs to Christ is one of his. This is why we would do it. Because, why? They belong to Jesus. The believer belongs to Jesus. I don't care who they are. I don't care what church they go to. I don't care if they go to a different church than you. If they are my brother and sister in Christ, I am to embrace them because they are my brother and sister and they belong to Jesus. They belong to Christ. They are one of his. They bear his image. They partake of his grace, and they are loved by him, and he shall be glorified in them. You know, John tells us in 1 John chapter 5, verse 1, that a test of your Christianity, of whether or not your Christianity is authentic, is whether or not you love the children of God. And he says that everyone who loves him who begot loves him who is begotten of him. Everyone who loves God loves his children. Do you love the children of God? Well, why don't you want to come to church? Some of you. Isn't that kind of revealing? Hello? Oh, I love the children of God. Well, I think lots of folks would say that, but they hate the church. Isn't that the most blatantly contradicting thing you've ever heard? And yet many of us have been there and lived that way, haven't we? If you love God, you love his children. Why? They're despicable children, aren't they? And they do dirty, rotten things that kids do, don't they? Just like you did when you were a kid and I did when I was a kid. I'm not making any confessions here. My mom's here. But still. They're children and they do things that are rotten. And yet, you know what? I would love someone's kids if I love that person. I may not like everything they do, but they're, think about families and uncles and aunts. And, you might not get along with your cousins, quite frankly. You might not get along with them. But you might not like them a bit, but you know what? I'll bet you your parents love them just because they're the children of their siblings. Maybe not. But in God's family, it ought to be so. It ought to be true. It ought to be true because we belong to the same Father. And so, what if your child don't thank you for your welcoming disposition? What if you welcome someone into your home or into your life and this other believer don't thank you for your welcoming disposition towards them? What if they don't seem grateful? And what if, as a matter of fact, they think like they kind of deserved it? I mean, they are so-and-so, you know. Well, you know what? Your Father in heaven feels it. Because Jesus says, if you do it to them, you do it to me. And if you do it to me, you don't just do that for me, you do it for my Father in heaven. You see, children make a lot of mistakes, don't they? And they're often clueless to the burdens that people around them bear. And so are baby Christians. They're often clueless to the burdens that other people within the church are bearing. I don't quite understand the work that you or I might do within the church to make it possible for them to be able to draw closer to God. And just because they don't recognize that does not give you the right to go out and be obnoxious towards them and to be mean or to quit doing what God has called you to do. You see, how many of your failings have others sustained and had pity on you in the name of the Father in order to get you where you are at today? How much of your stuff, I'll put it that way, have other people put up with to get you where you are today? Well, I don't give stuff. I'm a pretty good person. That's what you think. That's what you think. Let me ask that about the people who live with you. I find people who live with you know you the best. They'll be able to give us the skinny on what's real, huh? See, a welcoming heart embraces all who come in Jesus' name, but a welcoming heart is also, it's not in competition with those who come in Jesus' name.